Welcome to my OSN InfyTQ Day 3 Python training.
Right, today we'll be starting with your OOPS concept. We'll complete your functions and we'll move on to your OOPS concept. And we'll be starting with some MCQs in classes today, right? So this is your agenda for the day. We'll complete your functions. We'll complete your functions, and after completing your functions, we'll be starting with classes today, and we'll be discussing your classes constructors and some MCQs based on classes, right? So this is what is planned for the day. So I'll be sharing my screen now. Right, once your video is posted, once the recorded session of the video is posted, once everything is done, you will be getting a message in your portal, right? Every information will be there in your portal, right? You will get all those information in your portal. Right, whatever it's the case, right? Your videos, regarding your posting of your videos, regarding the contents and anything, you will be getting information from your, you will be getting the information in your portal, right? So we'll be starting with the class now. So we have covered, we have started with the basic concepts of, like, can a test be n number of times? Yes, you can. As sir told you just now, the tests will be open for a certain period of time, right? Once you have completed the test and after the mark is displayed, right? After the mark is displayed and after they have consolidated the marks, again the test will be made visible, right? Again the test will be made visible. So don't worry, you can take the test n number of times, but only the marks of the test that you have taken in the first time will be taken into count. The other test, you can use it for your purpose of your own practice, right? So you can take your test any number of times. Day 1 test is not visible. As I told you, day 1 test is being made activated, right? Day 1 and day 2 test will be activated after this session, right? So we'll be starting with your functions now. So when you talk about function, what is a function? So what can be, or what is the purpose of a function, and what use does a function bring into a program, right? So now when you talk about a function, you say it is a block of code, and that block of code, it is written for a specific task, and you write that block of code for a specific task to complete a specific task, and that task can be anything, right? And that task can be anything. So now when you talk about functions, the main reason why we go for a function is functions improve the modularity of a program. So when I have a function, they improve the modularity of a program, and also that when you talk about the function, they improve your for test link and support mail ID also. People who have any issues regarding the test, right? People who have any issues regarding a text, please don't leave the class after that. Please don't leave the class after the session ends, right? Your session ends by 8 o'clock today, and those who have any issues, like you're not able to see the test series, your test is not visible, your contents of the test is visible, whatever issues that you had in your test, and those people, please don't leave the class after the session ends, right? After the session ends, we will try to solve your issues after the session and not now, please, right? Nothing can be done now, so please wait till, this is, I'm telling for everybody, those who, anyone who has any issues with the test, right? Please wait. When the others sleep, don't leave the class at 8 o'clock. You can wait till the session ends at 8 o'clock. After the session ends at 8 o'clock, we will be solving all your test related issues, right? Any issues that are related to your test, right? We are keeping a full stop here. and that we can talk after your 8 o'clock, right? Is it clear? This is for everybody. Will definitely help you, and not now, but please wait for another 2.5 hours. So we'll get back to you at 8 o'clock. Okay, guys, hope this is fine. So no more messages regarding your test now. So we'll start with your functions again, right? So now when you talk about your function, as I'm telling you that a function is a block of code, and that is written to perform a specific task, and this function will not be automatically called, and you will have to call your function, right? And this function doesn't come into a picture unless you call a function. And also remember that when you talk about a function, it improves your modularity of your program. It improves your modularity of your program. As you know, what is modularity? When you have a big program, you can break them into smaller sub programs, right? And every sub program is called to be a separate module, right? And the other thing that when you talk about a function is that functions improves your purpose of your code reusability, right? So they help you in achieving your code reusability, right? So with that, we'll be straight away moving with the syntax of your function, right? Because your definition and everything will be knowing. And when you talk about a function, there are two types of function. One is a built-in function and other is a user-defined function, right? And when you talk about built-in function, you have an n number of built-in functions there in Python, right? So we'll not be discussing all the built-in functions. We'll be discussing one of the very few important built-in functions that you can expect in your MCQs, and we'll be discussing in detail about your user-defined functions, right? So when you say it's a built-in function, it will be automatically present in the language for you, right? You will not be writing the code for a built-in function. It should have been done for you, right? And next case is a user-defined function. A user-defined function is the function that you write the code for, right? Anything of your choice. If you want a function, right, and if you want it to be, if you want the function to find the square of a number, then you will have to write the code for that, right? This is called as a user-defined function. And if you can look at the screen, you have two syntaxes there, right? You will have two syntaxes. You have two syntaxes there. So first we'll look at the first syntax, and then we'll come back to your second syntax. And if you can remember the syntax that we have used in your C language and your other programming language, right? You have used a return statement. The first part of your function will be a return statement, and that will be a data type, right? So as you say that Python is a dynamically typed programming language, we are not very much bothered about the return type of your program, and everything will be taken care automatically, So now when I say, so how does you identify a function in Python? Def is the keyword. Def is the keyword to identify a function in Python. Any function in Python should start with def. Any function in Python should start with the keyword def followed by the name of a function, right? So whatever the naming conditions that were applicable for a variable, it also applies here, right? The naming conditions also are applicable here. So first followed by the def is your keyword, and next is the function name, and this is the name that you give to a function, right? And after that you have a list of parameters, and it is not, your function may have parameters or they may not have parameters, right? So depending upon the function, you may or you may not have a parameter, right? And the next line after that, it's called to be a function docstring. And if you can see a function docstring, that is your entire docstring will be included within a double quotes. So the entire function docstring will be put inside a double quotes, And then after that, you have something called as a function suit. And this function suit is your body of your function. The operation that you want your function to be performed, that will be put into your function suit. And after that, you have a written statement. And if you can look at the next syntax, it's almost the same, but only with the difference that this doesn't have a function docstring. So remember that function docstrings are purely optional, but when you start your professional programming, function docstrings are compulsory. Right? Function docstrings are compulsory. Right? What is a function docstring? A function, whenever you say docstring, it means that it is a documentation string. The docstring stands for documentation strings. What is documentation? Right? You would have all done your mini projects, right? You would have all done your mini projects, right? And after you have completed your mini projects, you would have done something called as a documentation. So what does your documentation will carry? Your documentation will carry all the relevant information regarding your mini project. Where did you do? When did you start? And what is your mini project is about? And how did you implement? Right. So everything, any kind of information about the mini project, you can find it in your documentation. Similarly, any kind of information regarding the function, I can find it in a docstring. I'll be able to find it in my docstring. So what do you mean by a docstring, or what is the purpose? So suppose this function is used to find the square of a number. So this function is used to find the square of a number. Then I'll write this is the function that is used to find the square of a number, and this function takes as input a integer. This function takes as input a integer, right? Very right. This is a description about the function. Even though I give a description about the function, I will not be revealing the details. How do I find the square of a number, right? I will be giving an information saying that this is used to find this function is for finding the square of a number, but other than that, I will not be giving any other details. Other than that, will not be mentioned, right? So this is your purpose of your function docstring, and remember they are purely optional. And after that, I have the function suit, your body of your function, and then my written statements, right? So now I'm creating a function in Python. As I told you, when you create a function, you will have to use a def keyword, and you can have a written, if you want, you can have a written statement, or you may not also have a written statement. So def is your keyword here, and followed by the name of your function, right? This function doesn't take any parameters. There are no parameters here. So I'll simply print a message saying that print hello from a function. And now, as I told you, a function will not be executed unless and until it is called, right? So only when your function is called, it will be executed, right? So now I say this is your body of hello from a function is my body of my function, and when I simply say my function, then this statement is used for calling a function. This statement is used for calling a function. Right. So now, what about parameters? I've told you regarding the parameters. You may pass or you may not pass parameters to a function. And there are 4 types of parameters that you can pass to a function. The first type of parameter we call is to be a required parameter. So what is a required parameter? So this is my function declaration. When I declare a function, or when I define a function with a parameter, when you define a function with a parameter, so when you call a function, it has to be called with you will have to give a parameter here. When you declare a function with the parameter here, when you declare a function with a parameter, and when you call that function, you will have to pass a parameter also, right? And next is your keyword arguments, right? So you can pass, just like what we have seen in your dictionary yesterday, you can pass parameters in the form of key and value, right? So I have three parameters here. child 3, child 2, and child 1, right? So now when I call my function here, when I call my function, I start with child 1, right? I don't start with child 3, but instead I start with child 1. I'm not bothered with the order here because I have a key and a value here. When this key is not present here, if child 1 is equal child 1, child 2, and child 3 is not present here, then this order is very important. Then the order in which you have defined is very, very important. But since I'm giving them as key and value first, I don't have to be bothered about the, right? I don't have to be bothered about the order in which they are being declared, right? So this is called to be your key value, and next I come to a default value parameter, right? So now when I say country is equal to Norway, right? I give a key and a value. So this is your default parameter. When I say my function of Sweden, I say I am from Sweden. When nothing is given here, right? When I call a function without a value, without passing any parameter, then the default value of Norway will be taken. So the output will be printed as I am from Norway. Right, and next is your variable length arguments. And if you are not sure, right, if you are not sure about the number of parameters that you will be passing or you require, then you just need to add a asterisk before the parameter. Right, this you will be using it if you are not sure of the number that you require. So in that case, you will be putting an asterisk here, which means you can use any number of parameters during your function call. So can I pass a list as a parameter? As you know, a list is very similar to an array. So a list can be passed as a parameter, and not alone list. You can pass a string as a parameter. You can pass a dictionary as a parameter. A set can be passed as a parameter, and also a tuple can be passed as a parameter, right? All your 5 basic data types can be passed as a parameter to your function. And when you talk about return value, so long the programs that you have seen doesn't have a return value, right? So now we'll see a program with a return value. So now when I say def my function of x and return 5 into x. So when I say my function, when I call this function with 3, my function of 3, 5 into 3. When I call it with my function of 5, 5 into 5. My function of 9, 5 into 9. So this is how you'll be using your return function. Can I have an empty function? No, you cannot have an empty function. So when I say an empty function, it will contain only the first line of the function, that is def and the function name, and it will not contain any, there will not be any body of your function, right? So when you don't have any body of your function, it is called to be an empty function. You cannot have an empty function in Python. In that case, then you'll have to give pass, right? Only if you give pass, you will not be getting an error, or else you'll be getting an error, right? So there are two things with regard to a variable, right? When you talk about a variable, there are two things. In general, when I have a variable, I have two types of variables. One is a local variable, the other is a global variable. Any variable that is declared inside a function, it is called as a local variable. A variable that is declared outside a function is called as a global variable. A variable declared outside a function is called as a global. You call it to be a global variable, right? So now what about this x is equal to 10? Is it a local variable or is it a global variable? X is equal to 10, local or global?
Local variable.
Local variable.
Local variable.
Right, it is a local variable. Since it is declared within a function, this is a local variable. And when you talk about x is equal to 20, it is outside a function. So this is called as a local variable, right? So this x is different and this x is different. So what is the scope of a global variable? A global variable scope is only within the function. A local variable can be accessible only within the function. And when you talk about the lifetime, of a variable, It is how long is the variable accessible. As long it is accessible only within your function. A local variable can be accessed only within a function, and a local variable will be in memory only when your function is in execution. But when you talk about a global variable can be accessed throughout the program, right? And also when you talk about your lifetime of a global variable, as long as the program is in execution, your global variable will also be there in the memory, right? So this is with your local and global variable, right? So we'll quickly move on to the recursion. Remember that recursion is a function that calls itself again and again, a function that calls itself again and again until a particular condition is satisfied. That is called to be a recursion. And when you talk about recursion, remember that every recursion should have a base condition. So what is a base condition? And if you can identify the base condition in this program, what do you mean by the term a base condition?
Known value.
What do you mean by a base condition? In fact, factorial. Right, the impact is called the base condition, right? So when you say that if x is equal to 1, you say return 1. The ending condition, you should specify an ending condition for a recursion. And if you don't specify an ending condition for a recursion, it becomes a continuous process. It keeps on executing again and again, right? So now when you say this fact of x minus 1, this is where you keep on calling your function, and you will keep calling your function until your value of x becomes 1. So when your value of x becomes 1, you return 1 to the user and you exit the program, right? So this is how you have this recursion, right? So when you talk about recursions, you have many disadvantages of your recursion. Can you name some of your disadvantages?
Memory management.
All in infinite loop.
Yes. Can you be a little bit louder? Oh,
Memory management.
right, memory management. It becomes a difficult process because you have many calls to a function. So managing your memory becomes a difficult process. And when you have a recursion with a complex code, then it becomes tougher for you to debug your code, right? And now we'll move on to your built-in functions of Python. As I told you, we will not be fully studying all the built-in functions. Very few important built-in functions that are required, right? So when you say ABS, right, it takes, I'll be moving a little bit faster, right? ABS, only the value of a number will be taken into account and the sign will be ignored, right? And remember, this is again a very important function. There are two functions here. One is all, the other is any function, right? So we'll be discussing about two functions now, all and any. So, right. So this function, the input that you give to a function is an iterable object. So you know what are iterable objects, right? So when you talk about iterable objects, you will have string, list, dictionary, tuple, and all those things. They are called to be an iterable object. So what is this? I say k is equal to 1, 3, 4, 6. So what data type is k? What is this?
List, ma'am.
Hey, list. A list is an iterable list. It is list. List is k belongs to a type of list. So now when I say print all of k, what does it means, right? When I say print all of k, it means that when all your objects of your iterable are true, when all the objects of your iterable are true, then this returns me true. Then this returns me true. So what is a true value? Any non-zero value is considered to be true. Any non-zero value is considered to be true. So 1 is a non-zero value, 3 is a non-zero value, 4 is a non-zero value, and 6 is also a non-zero value. So all are true here, so I get the output as true. And here 0, false. Both represents a false, so it is false. And here if we can take, I have 3 non-zero values and 1 non-zero value. Even though if one is a non-zero value, this function will return me only false. And next case, I have 2 false values and 1 non-zero value. So this is again false. And here if we can take, I have an empty iterable. When you have an empty list, this function returns me true. Right? So remember this, when you say all, only when all are true, this function returns me true. And even when one is false, this function will return me false. But when I have an empty list, this function returns me true. So remember this, when I have an empty list, this function returns me true. So when I say bin is used to convert a given number to a binary, and when it is converted, it will be prefixed with 0b. Remember, 0b is for a binary, 0o is for an octal, and 0x is for a hexadecimal. And some find the sums of a number. And next, as I told you, the next is any function. Right, any. So when you take an any, the first list, the input is again a list here. So I have 3 non-zero value and 1 0 value. Even if one is true here, even if one is true, the output will be true here. So for the first one, it will be true. And for the second one, both are false. So the output will be false. And for the third one, you have 2 false and 1 true value, right? Even though if one is true, this function will return me true. But when I have an empty iterable, this function returns me false. When I have an empty iterable, this function returns me false. This function will return me false. Right? This is the difference between any and all. Right? And eval function, it is used to evaluate an expression. Right? And float of this function is used to convert a number to a floating point. 9 will be converted to 9.0. This will be to 8.19. And if you can see, this is a string, minus 24.27 given within a double quotes. This is a string. So this will be converted to a float, minus 24.27. And this is again a string. This is again a string, minus 17.19 is a string. And if you can see, you have white spaces before, that will all be eliminated. And it will be converted to minus 17.19. And now when you try to convert x, y, z is a string, and this cannot be converted to a floating point data type, and this will give you a error, right? And we have seen a format function, and hexa I have told it's converted to a hexa number, right? An input function is used to read an input from the user. And int value converts your given number to integers. All your decimal values will be truncated and it converted to an integer. An octal number, your input is converted to an octal, and when you convert it, it is added with 0O. It is 0O. 0B for binary, 0O for octal, and 0x for a hexadecimal number. And round off function is used to round off to your nearest integer, 10, 11 and 7, right? And string function converts a given value to a string, right? And next is your lambda functions, right? So tell me if you have studied your lambda functions, or tell me what you mean by a lambda function. What do
It
you mean
accepts
by
just one argument.
yes,
It accepts only one argument.
right? It accepts only one argument. Any other thing that you know about a lambda function?
Only one expression.
Single line function.
Argument.
What function?
Single line function.
Right, it is very similar to your inline functions. They are called to be your single line functions. And does lambda functions have a name? Do you have a name for a lambda function?
Inline function.
See, every function will have a function name, right? You use def and followed by your function name. Am I right? Your regular functions will be like def is the keyword, followed by def, you will have a name for a function. Am I right? This is right. Right. Lambda functions are called to be anonymous functions because they don't have any name. Because they don't have any name and no def is used here. Right. Very good. So you have all done some homeworks. Right. Remember, lambda function are anonymous functions. They are written in a single line and they don't have any name and no keyword. The def keyword is not used there. The purpose of your lambda function. What is the purpose of your lambda function? There are some places where you cannot use your regular function, right? Specifically, for example, when you have a written statement, can I use a function in my written statement? Can I use a function in my written statement? Can I use functions in my written statement?
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So yes, you can use functions in your written statements. Functions can be used in your written statement. But some cases you find it odd in writing a function in a written statement. In those kinds of purposes, you can use a lambda function, right? And you can use lambda function in those places, right? You can use lambda function in places where you cannot use a regular function, right? When you use a regular function, when it throws you a syntax error, in those places you can use a lambda function, right? So remember, this is a lambda functions, right? And lambda functions don't have any name. They don't have name and they start with the keyword lambda. So I say lambda a plus 10. When you pass a number, 10 will be added to that function and the result will be written as your output, right? And lambda functions can take any number of arguments, right? You can take any number of arguments you want. The previous program had only one arguments, right? But here I am passing two arguments, a comma b. It multiplies the values of a and b and returns the output. And here again, you see, I have a lambda functions with three arguments, a, b, and c. I add the three numbers. Right? So you can have any number of arguments, but this expression should be only one. Any number of arguments can be there. These are the arguments that you have passed to the lambda function, and this is an expression, and I can have only one expression in my lambda function, right? More than one expression is not allowed in a lambda function. Right. So next is, why do you use a lambda function, right? So see an example here. In my written statement, you have a written statement here. In my written statement, I've used the lambda function, right? So this is a best place to use your lambda function. This is your best place to use your lambda function. So I've used my lambda functions in my written statement. So when you have your written statement, say I say lambda a and a is equal to a into n. So a into n, and this is the value that you pass to a function. So it is 2 into 11. 2 into 11. The same function I use for 3 into 11. And if you can see, this is the place where I'm combining everything. I have a simple lambda function here. I have a single lambda function here. And this single lambda function performs two tasks here. One is to double the value and the other is to triple the value, right? So this is one of your best example of your lambda functions. Right. So now we'll be starting with your OOPS concept, right? So tell me what first, what do you know about your OOPS concept, and then we'll produce. What are the things that you know about an object-oriented programming language? Everything is an object. Polymorphism, class object polymorphism,
Inheritance, ma'am.
object data encapsulation,
Encapsulation.
exception handling. Does it come
Exception
under
hand.
exception handling? Does it comes under object-oriented programming? Who told you exception handling comes under object-oriented programming? Abstraction, inheritance. Exception handling is not a part of object-oriented programming. Abstraction, data hiding, everything is right. But what is actually object-oriented programming? Everything is treated as an object. What is an object? What is an object?
Real world entity.
Class
Entity.
is the object.
Class, an entity, instance of a class, blueprint of a class, real world entity. What is a class? What is a class?
Template or blue.
Template or blueprint, collection of objects, set of objects, logical entity, very good. Blueprint or template, certain common characteristics. Right, right. So OOPS is something that is very, very familiar to you, right? Behavior of an object. Right. So now we'll discuss your object-oriented concepts with some scenarios. Right. So now you have a classroom in your college, right? You have a classroom in your college, and your classroom will contain, you have table and chairs, you will have a fan, you will have tube light, there's a blackboard, there's a very big blackboard, and you have a podium, right? And this is your classroom in Panimala, am I right? You don't have any projectors in your classroom. That is right? Right? So this is how you'll have your classroom. So when you have a classroom, what are the things you'll have in your classroom? There are table and chairs, you will have windows, you will have doors, there's a blackboard, tube light, and everything. If you take your strength of your class to be 70, right? If you take your strength of your class to be 70, right? And now I'm asking you a question. So listen carefully to my question before you answer this, right? So you have many things in your classroom, right? Can any one of you claim a complete ownership, right? Can anyone out of the 70, can anyone tell this table belongs to me, this chair belongs to me, this blackboard belongs to me, this fan belongs to me, this light belongs to me? Can any one of a student claim an individual ownership? No, it is not possible. Not a single student can claim ownership, right? So which means that everything in your class belongs to all the students. Everything in your class belongs to all the students. Right. So when you break a table in your class, when somehow a table is broken, so who will pay the fine for that broken table? Everybody in a class or a single person? Everyone.
Everyone.
Everyone. So can I tell that all the things that you have in a class, right? All the things that you have in a class belongs to everybody. Is that true? Right or wrong? Right? So it belongs to everybody. Right? So this is one case. So remember this. Remember this. Right. And next, right. So next again, we'll come back to the same classroom. So now I assume that a classroom to be a class. I assume a classroom to be a class, and I also assume the students to be the object, and also assume the students to be the object, right? So when a student looks at the board, as a student, when you look at the board, what do you feel? Do you feel that we have a feel that this board belongs to me? Am I right? Because when you sit in a class and look at the blackboard, you have a feeling that the entire blackboard is completely visible to you, right? Or do we say that a particular student has to view only one part of the board? Does someone tell you that a student, you have to view only this part of the board, and this student has to view only this part of the board? This student has to view only this part of the board. It is not the case. Am I right? Right. So this is not the case here, right? As a student, you can view your entire board. You can have a look at your entire board. So you get a feeling that the entire board belongs to you. Am I right? Yes or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you get a feeling that the entire board belongs to you, right? So imagine a student to be a object. Imagine the student to be a object, right? So when you say that, whenever I tell you define an object, you are telling me that an object is an instance of a class. So this is the reason why we tell an object is an instance of a class. So when I tell you in a layman's term, right? A simple term, just like any school student can understand, when there is a 70 students in the class, I say this class has got 70 object. I can say that this class has got 70 object, and all the 70 object will own the class, meaning that you think that you have a copy of your class, right? So everybody thinks that, okay, this chair belongs to me. This chair belongs to me, this table belongs to me, this blackboard belongs to me, this fan belongs to me, this slide belongs to me, right? Every 70 object in your class, they have a feel that everything in your class belongs to them. So that is the reason you say an object is an instance of a class. That is why you say an object is an instance of a class. So this is one thing. So please understand, imagine your class to be a classroom and students to be an object. So this is one case, right? So now I'll tell you the second case. You have a classroom, right? You have a college. It is best in the infrastructure. You have air-conditioned classroom. Name any comfort that you want. Everything is there inside your classroom, right? But still, when there are no students in your college, right? When there are no students in the college, do you think will there be any meaning for all those infrastructures and for all the things that is there inside your classroom?
No, ma'am.
No meaning. Why? Without an when you
There
don't
are
have,
no objects.
there are no objects. Very simple. When there are no students, nobody is going to teach anything to the empty desks in your college, right? So the same way, even though I have a class, a full-fledged class with everything, this class will become meaningful only when I create an object to the class. The class becomes meaningful only when I create an object to the class, right? So remember, your class is not used unless you create an object to your class, right? So with this, we'll move on to your object-oriented concept. Okay. So as you have told that when you say an object-oriented programming, anything that you see around, any real-world entity can be made into an object. So when you have an object will have a state and a behavior. The object will have both state and behavior. So what is a state and what is a behavior? What is a state and what is a behavior? So when you talk about the attributes which do not change, you call it to be a state, and behavior is something that keeps on changing, So now when you consider a student object, what will be the state of a student object? What will be the state of your student object and what will be the behavior of a student object? State is something that do not change and behavior is something that do change. So as a student, your register number doesn't change. Till you complete your final year, you will have the same register number, right? 2018 PEC MEC PEC, if it's computer science, you'll have CS, and if it's PIT, you'll have PIT CS. Am I right? Till the 4th year, you'll have the same registration number. Your name will not change, and your department will also not change. Right? What you keep on changing your departments, right? Year. Your year changes every year, I guess. When you study in the first year, it should be first year. And when you study in the next year, it should be your second year and so on, right? Your year keeps on changing. So what that do not change is your name will not change. Your register number will not change. Your department also will not change. Your department also will not change. And when you talk about the behavior, ID card, right? You have the same ID card for 4 years, right? Of course, very good. You have the same ID card for 4 years. So your ID card also doesn't change. Your library card, they also don't change. Your bus pass changes every year, right? So now when you take your behavior are the objects that changes. Very good. Study. First year, you study well. Second year, the marks come down. Read. Okay, your staffs keep on changing. Your marks keep on changing. The way they study change. Very good. Your year changes. Right. Very good. Subjects changes. Your what else? Your listening habit changes. Right. First year, you'll all be very good. Second year, right? Start wagging your tails and so on, right? Knowledge, very good. Right. So stuff changes, very good. Almost like these are the behaviors, right? So state of an object do not change, and behavior of an object changes with a period of time. So you have state and objects, and when you talk about a class, you say a class is a blueprint. It is a logical entity, and remember that a class is a logical entity. It is not a physical entity. And that when you talk about a method, what is a method? Any function that is within a class, we call it to be a method. A class can have methods. Remember, a class can have methods, and the methods within a classes is called to be, a function within a class is called to be a method, right? So now, what is inheritance, right? We'll just have a small recap of whatever topics that you have studied, and then this session will be concentrating only on your classes and object. But anyway, let us just recap. What is inheritance? What do you mean by inheritance?
Acquiring certain characteristics.
Inheriting the quality from the ancestors, right? This is called as your inheritance. Even though you inherit or you acquire some properties from your parent, you will also have your own properties also. You will also have your own property. This is called as inheritance, right? So one of your major advantage of your object-oriented programming is your code reusability. It is your code reusability. And when you talk about inheritance helps you in achieving your code reusability. Inheritance helps you with achieving your code reusability, right? So now when you talk about inheritance, you will come across two terms: superclass, derived superclass, parent class, and base class, right? Superclass, parent class, and base class, right? So this is the class from which you derive your properties. This is the class from which you derive your property. This is called to be your superclass, or you call it to be your base class, or you can call it to be your parent class, right? And the new class that you form is called to be your child class. You can also call it to be your subclass, or you can call it to be your derived class, right? Remember, even though all the properties of your parent class, you can derive all the properties of your parent class, But other than your properties of your parent class, you can also have your own properties. You can also have your own properties and method, and this is called to be your inheritance, and inheritance helps in your code reusability. And when you say polymorphism, it is many forms, right? It is many forms. So we say you can perform it different ways. That is called your polymorphism. Your example of your polymorphism. Right. So now there are again two things. One is called to be your encapsulation. The other is called to be your data abstraction. Right. So when you talk about object-oriented programming language, we say that the code is secure in an object-oriented programming language. How do you think the code is secure? How can you make a code secure? Can I put a lock to my code? How do you ensure your security of your house? How do you ensure the security of your house? Lock. You put a lock. By locking the house, you ensure your security of your house. But when I have a code, can I put a lock to that code?
No, ma'am.
Function, abstraction, right? Can I put a lock to a code? It is not possible, right? So I'll ask you something very simple. Every house will have a bureau, right? A bureau or a cupboard that will contain some important documents, right? You have a place in your house, usually it's a bureau or a cupboard, and they will have some important, or you will have a locker, or you place some important documents inside them. Your property document, house document, whatever document that you have, any important documents will be placed there. You will be placing your cash there and also your jewels there, right? So now, if it is placed inside a bureau, who will be allowed to open the bureau? Owner, right? In your house, you have mother, father, and there are two persons. Imagine mother, father, and you and your sibling. So who will have the key to that? Right, owner, authority person, key holder. Who will have the key? There are four persons who have access. Mother, right? Very good. It's mom. Who access? Right. And will the children be given access to them? No. Why not?
No, ma'am.
No, because you don't understand the importance of that, right? Sometimes, but not all the time. So you will not be. So you will, right, your children will not be given access to them. The reason is because since I have very important documents there, I don't want everyone to open it. As I told you, only the authorized person or only a responsible person will be allowed to open. So what do I do there? So how do I achieve the security there? Locking is one type of security, and again, when I lock it, I need to access them. So what kind of access do I provide? Not all the four members in the house is given an access, right? Right, preventing the access, private access, not giving permission. Right, access is not given to everybody, but only a single person is given an access. So can I say is that a restricted access? You call that to be a restricted access?
Yes, ma'am.
Restricted access. So this is what you do in encapsulation. So that your data and code will not be accidentally modified by anyone. Right? Again, what you do is that the code and the data will be wrapped into a single unit, right? And even though I wrap them in a single unit, I don't allow everything to access them. So I give a restricted to access to them. This is how you do it in encapsulation. Is my screen visible now? No.
No, ma'am.
Right, okay.
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Okay, now it's visible.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Right. So now this is your encapsulation. And remember, there is a difference between encapsulation and data abstraction. They are not the same, right? Remember, they are not the same, but we tend to use it as though they are same, but they are not same, right? They are different concepts because we say data abstraction is achieved through data encapsulation. Data abstraction is achieved through data encapsulation. Right. So what is data abstraction now? So we have seen what is encapsulation. We have seen what is data abstraction, data encapsulation. Data encapsulation, your code and your data is wrapped together. And how do you achieve the security? You by providing restricted access, right? So when you talk about data abstraction, you talk about you will be giving out only the functionalities and not how does it work, right? A very good example for your data abstraction, right? So remember these examples and you will never forget what is data abstraction and what is data encapsulation throughout your life, right? So, but remember this example. Right now, I'll give you one more scenario here, right? And you are preparing a signature dish. When I say signature recipe of yours, that is something that you have founded, right? And that dish is your specialty. That recipe is your specialty, right? You have cooked something and it came out very well. So you bring it to your college. Of course, I know it is not allowed in your college, but anyway, just a scenario. You take it to your college, you give it to your friend, you share it with your friends, and your friends are full of praises. They say that's very good, it's very tasty, right? It is tasty and all those things, right? And people want to know how did you make it, right? People want to know how did you make it. Since I'm telling you that this is your signature recipe, you will always have a secret ingredient, right? You will always have a secret ingredient to it, right? So when people come and tell you that, please share me the recipe, right? What will you do? What will you do? You will share your recipe, right? Skip that secret. So if people keep on pestering you, right? Tell me, and imagine that you have made a payasam, right? So now tell me, what did you do? They keep on pestering you. So what do you say? Telling only the important things. You will tell the important things. See, if that is my signature disk, I won't be sharing all the fake information, lying, fake information. Tell all the alternate ingredients, right? I'm getting all kinds of different answers here, right? So just the procedure, that's good. So what you say is that you don't have to give fake information for that. So I'll have to be very careful not to ask any kind of information from you, right? So if I'm making a parpu payasam, then what I'll be doing is that I'll take, okay, take this parpu, boil it, put jaggery, put coconut milk, that's it, right? So I will be giving you just an outline, right? Give YouTube link, that is very good. I'm not talking about a YouTube video, I'm talking about your own signature dish, right? It shouldn't be available in YouTube. When you call a dish to be your signature dish, it should be your own dish and not a YouTube video link, right? So that's not possible. Right? So what do you do is that if people keep on pestering you, what you will say? You will say the outline. This is what is used, right? But you will not tell the complete procedure, and also you will not give them the exact measure of your ingredient, right? You will not give them the entire measure of the ingredient, right? So, right, I said procedure without secret ingredient, that is right. So this is what you do in your data abstraction also. You hide how the function, how it works, right? Internal details like how it works, what it requires for it to work perfectly, but you will tell what is this for, right? You will just tell them that this is a function that is used for adding two numbers, but you don't give any other details. What number you are reading, how you are reading a number, and what operation, how do you find the sum of two numbers. That information will not be given by you. Right? This is called as your data abstraction. Right? So remember this in mind. Data encapsulation, code security of your code is achieved to restricted access, where your code and your data is combined, is encapsulated into a single unit. And when you talk about data abstraction is achieved only through encapsulation. So abstraction is where you hide the internal details and only show the functionalities, right? So remember, this is a question that is very frequently asked in your face-to-face interview, right? So please do remember this. So look at your syntax for your class in Python. Right, so this is how you have a class is being declared in Python. You will have the keyword class followed by the name of your class, and this is your members of your class. You will have ID. There are two members, ID and name. Right, you will have ID and name here. Right. So now, what is this?
Function.
Right, this is a function. Since it starts with def, you know that this is a function. What do you call a function inside a class? What is a function that is inside a class is called?
Method.
Method.
Call it to be a method. It is called to be a method. So now, so you say, and what about this parameter, right? So remember, this parameter is called as a self parameter. This is used to refer to the instance of this particular class. This is used to refer to the instance of this particular class. It is used to refer to the instance of this particular class. So now, even though a function has a parameter or it doesn't has a parameter, right? If it have a parameter or it doesn't have a parameter, you are not bothered about that. The first parameter of any function inside a class should be a self parameter. The first parameter that you have inside a class, it should be any function that it is inside a class, right? And the first parameter should be only a self parameter, and the self parameter is used to refer to the, it is used to refer to the instance of a class. It is used to refer to the instance of a class, right? And as I told you, when you have a class as a standalone entity, nothing can be done with a class. A class as a standalone entity doesn't have meaning, and you cannot do anything with that class as such, right? So for a class to have meaning, or for a class to come into existence, a class has to be initiated, right? It's for, you call it to be a process of instantiation. So this is the process of object creation. Only when an object is created for a class, only when you create an object for a class, your class comes into existence. Your class comes into existence. So how do you create an object? This is how you create an object. Object is equal to class name. Object is equal to class name. For this program, I'm creating only one object. For this program, I'm creating only one object, right? So what style of formatting? If you look at your formatting here, we have seen this yesterday. Remember? We have seen about your C style formatting yesterday. Did we discuss this? I'm not, have you seen it? Right. So this
Yes, ma'am.
C style formatting. Right? Instead of using your format function, we can use this way, right? So I've created just only one function here. I've created only one function. I've created only one object here. Right. And the next thing is that whenever you talk about an object-oriented programming, there are two things. One is a constructor, the other is your destructor. So what is a constructor? Constructors are used for the purpose of your allocation of memory, and destructors are used to deallocate the memory that is being allocated using a constructor. That is being allocated using a constructor. So now when you talk about this constructor, what are the things that you know about the constructor? Previously, what have you studied about the constructor? Default, no parameters. Default constructor is called automatically. What about the name of the constructor? What about the name of a constructor? Class name. A constructor should have the same name as a class name. Okay. So you are all familiar with the constructors, right? So previously we have studied that a class name and the constructor name should be the same. So can I call a constructor to be a special kind of function? Can a constructor be called as a special type of function? Yes, we can say a function constructor to be a special function, and then whenever you say that a constructor is called automatically, but when it is called automatically, it will not be called every time. When it will be called creation of an object. So when you create an object, your constructor will be called automatically, right? So thank you all for your responses, right? So now we say, so when you talk about the definition of a constructor, right? So we say that a constructor should have the same name as a class name. A constructor is a special type of function without a return type, and also that a constructor is automatically invoked whenever I create an object. So whenever I create an object, a constructor is automatically invoked, right? So this is the standard definition of the constructor we have studied in your C++ as well as in your Java, right? But here we have a small change here. Whenever I tell constructor, it is a special kind of function, and even in Python, a constructor is a special kind of function. But you have a difference here, right? But you have a difference here. The one difference in here is that the name of your constructor and the class name will not be the same. the name of your constructor and your class name will not be the same. They will all be different, right? So by default, the constructor in Python, it is called as init, I-N-I-T, and you have double underscores before and after this. This is called as leading and trailing double underscore. You call them to be leading and trailing underscore, right? And the same case, this will be automatically invoked whenever an object is created. Whenever you create an object, this constructor will be automatically invoked, right? So now, this is a function. The same thing. The constructor is also a function. How do we know that constructor is a function? Since I've used a def keyword here. Since I've used a def keyword here, it means that this constructor is also a function. As I told you, whenever I have a function inside a class, the first parameter should be the self parameter. The first parameter, it should be the self parameter, right? Instead of self, can we use this keyword now, right? You can use self is a keyword that check. Self is a name that I have chosen, right? Self is a name that is chosen by me, and if you want, you can change the name of self to any other parameters that you want. Self is again a user defined name, but if you see, this has become a standard now. This has become a standard. Right? Any Python program, you see the first parameter will be a self. You can give any name of your choice. You can give any name of your choice, but still we prefer using self, right? Even if you give any other name, it will not throw you an error, but still this has become a standard. We are following this, right? We are following this way of using your self just for a uniformity purpose, so that everyone can understand it easily. So you are using your self keyword here, right? And even a constructor is a function, right? Even a constructor is a function. So when your constructor is a function, then again, the first keyword will be the self here. So when you talk about constructors, you can talk about there are two types of constructor. One is a parameterized constructor, and the other is your default constructor. And your other type of constructor is your default constructor. So when I go for a parameterized constructor, when do I go for a parameterized constructor? When I have to, if I want to initialize an object at the time of object creation, when I'll have to initialize an object. So what do you mean by initializing an object? Giving values for a name, right? If you can see here, ID has got a value of 101 and name has got a value of John. So this is called as initialization of an object. When you will have to initialize an object at the time of an object creation, right? Then you go for a parameterized constructor, right? So what is initialization of an object? When you give values to an object at the time of an object creation, this is called as your initialization of an object. And I have two objects here. I've created two objects here. So this is called to be a parameterized constructor. And remember that init is a constructor in Python. And this init constructor, right? This begins with a leading and trailing underscore, right? Whenever you have a leading and a trailing underscore, right? It means that they represent a special purpose, or they have a special meaning, right? So that is why we have a leading and a trailing underscore. Even though it is a constructor, remember that a constructor is also a function. A constructor is also a function. So the first keyword will be the self keyword. The first keyword will be a self keyword, right? Again, remember when you have studied about naming a variable, the conditions that are used for naming a variable, right? So I have told you that underscores can be used as a name of a variable. You agree? Can an underscore be used a name of a variable? Yes, we have seen that underscore can be used as a name of a variable, right? But we generally don't practice that in Python. This is the reason. The reason is that because when I have leading and trailing underscore, they denote that they have, these are the words with special meaning. These are the words with special meaning. So that is the reason why I don't use them as a local variable name. So just understand this also. I think we have discussed one MCQ with this concept. Right. Now go through this example and tell me what type of constructor is this? This is a
Parameterized constructor.
And how many objects I'm creating here?
2.
No. How many objects you are creating? 2.
One object.
Name and age are not object. P1 is your object, right? P1 is your object that you are creating. Name and age, we can call them to be your attributes, right? Attributes, and P1 is an object that you create, right? So now tell me, go through this program and tell me if you can understand this program. So what is this program? Three objects, right? So now within your init method, I have a counter variable. So within your init method, I have a counter variable. So each and every time your object is created, this init method will be invoked, right? So init is your constructor. So what type of constructor is this? What type of constructor is that? Is it a param? This is a default.
Default.
And remember, even though it is a default constructor, it should have the keyword self. It should have the keyword self. Even though it's a default parameter, it should have a keyword self. So every time your constructor is invoked, each and every time you create an object, so this your constructor will be invoked. So the counter value increases. So when you create 3 objects, the output will be 3. So we have seen constructors and parameterized constructor. Right. So now we'll see how do you modify your object properties, right? So now I have a class. So I've created a class, and when you look at your parameters of your class here, I have name and age, right? Name and age. So since this is a parameterized constructor, when I create an object, I am initializing your object also, right? I'm giving the values for your object also. Name is John and age is 36. So now after I've given the age as 36, what I'm trying to do is that I'm trying to change the value of 36 to 40. And now when you print it, it becomes 40. Your object properties can be modified. And if you want, you can delete your object projects properties also. So here I'm deleting p1.age. After you have deleted this age, when you try to print that, you say the object has no attribute age. And you have deleted an object attribute. Now you are deleting the object itself. Right? So now you are deleting an object itself. So here, similarly, wherever you want an empty for empty class, empty if structure, empty function, you will be using a pass statement. And similarly, if you want to have an empty class, you will also use a past statement here. You will also use a past statement here. And we'll come back to this Python in the class functions. So can we take a short break of 5 minutes and we'll be back? Now it's almost like 6:58.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Please, we'll take a short break and we'll come back by 7:03. Right, so we'll start. So this is the built-in, these are the built-in functions that are available in a class, right? So how do you use them with the class, right? So now, this is again a student class. This is again, you have a student class and it has got name, ID and age. So get attribute is used to retrieve an attribute, retrieve the property of an attribute. When I say get attribute s comma name, then John will be the answer, right? Set attribute age comma 23. Previously the age was set to 22, right? And now after the statement, the age will be set to 23, but it will not be displayed. Only when you use get attribute. Only when you use get attribute, the age will be displayed. Only when you use get attribute, age will be displayed. And now has attribute. If there is an attribute called ID in the object, yes. If there is an attribute called ID in my given object, yes. So this has got an, yes, do I have an ID attribute? Yes, there is an ID attribute. So this will either return me true or false. So this will either return me true or false, right? And now delete attribute s dot s of age, and the age attribute is deleted. And after that, you try to print the value of age. It will not be printed. You will be getting an error saying that no attribute of that type is found. Right? So this is your attribute, right? So now you will discuss about your built-in class attributes. As I told you, when there is a special meaning, whenever I have meanings with special purposes, they are with the reserved keywords, right? Look at it, right? So we'll see everything with an example. Dictionary, right? Double leading and trailing double underscore, dictionary, doc, name, module, basis, right? And all those things, right? So now, this is a constructor. This is a class. We have created an object here, right? And I'm printing the doc. Doc stands for your doc string, right? We will see what is a doc string in detail now. Just like your function had some, your function also had a doc string. So every class will have a doc string. As I told you, these are used for your purposes of your, this is used for your purpose of documentation. So this is not compulsory, right? When you start writing your professional program, you will use your doc string. And this program, what is the dictionary? Right, dictionary. What is a dictionary? In a dictionary, everything will be stored in key and value pairs. So name is the key and John is the value. ID is the key, 101 is the value. Age is the key and 22 is the value. So this is your dictionary. And next is your module. Which module does this program belongs to? This program belongs to my main module, right? This program belongs to my main module. Okay? So main module is being displayed here. Okay? So what is a doc string? Remember, doc strings are used for a purpose of your documentation. They are used for your purpose of your documentation. And when you talk about a doc string, it should begin with a capital letter, right? And it is used to give a very short description. You will be giving only a short description and you will not be telling what you are doing. You will be telling only what you do and not how, right? Only what is done will be given to you and not how will be given to you, right? So when there are more than one line, right? When there are more than one line in your documentation, when there are more than one line in your doc string, the second line should be left blank, right? So we see This is a doc string that I have written. This is a doc string that is written in a single line. When I write a doc string, it should be enclosed within a triple double quotes. Every doc string that you write, it should be enclosed within a triple double quotes, right? So now this is a doc string. No, doc strings are not similar to encapsulation, right? Don't confuse your doc string with your encapsulation. Doc strings are used for your purpose of documentation, right? So they are very similar to comments. They are very similar to comments, right? They are very similar to comments. What does your comments do? Your comments tells us some information, right? This variable is the first number. This variable is a second number, right? As a user reference. Don't confuse with just because I've told you that it specifies what is done and not how is done. This is not related to encapsulation. This is not related to abstraction. This is no way related to any object-oriented concept here, right? Doc strings are purely used for your purpose of documentation, right? So as I told you, whenever I have a big project, right, at the end of your completion, as a software developer, you don't develop software for your own use. You develop software for your purpose and you give for a clienting. You give to the company that requested the project. And when you give the project to your company, you will give it along with your documentation. This is very similar to when you do your final year project, you will submit your project along with your documentation, right? So when I'm preparing your documentation, your programmer will not prepare the documentation. Remember, a programmer will not prepare the documentation. I have a separate team for preparing a documentation, right? So for that team to understand what is this all about, you will write your doc string. So doc strings are basically for your user reference and it improves your understandability of a code. When a third party comes and read your code, it helps in better understanding of your code. It helps in better understanding of your code. That is your purpose of your doc string. And please don't confuse this with any other thing. Okay. So now this is a function. I've written a function here, and this function is used to, I don't do anything, but simply I've written a function to demonstrate what is doc string here. So here when I write a doc string here, when I write a doc string, it should be enclosed within a triple double quotes. The first line of a doc string should start with a capital letter. It should start with a capital letter, right? So now how do you print a doc string? When you have the only difference between a comment and a doc string is that comments will not be executable. When you have an output, your comments are not visible in your output, but when you take a doc string, you can view your doc string in your output. Doc strings can be viewed in your output. So how do you view your doc string in your output? There are two methods, right? This is the first method, a double underscore doc. We have seen this. A double underscore doc is used to display your doc string, and your other method is by using your help, calling your help method, right? You can either use your double underscore doc, or you can also call your help method. So this is a doc string that is used within a function, and this is a single line doc string. Why are there no and for the print comment? Why are there no? You mean about the opening and the closing brace, right? You're talking about the print function here, right? You don't require it, right? Because you call my function, it is not required, or even if you use it, it is not an issue. You can just use it, right? You can use it anyway, right? So this is the first doc string that we have seen here. That was a single line doc string, and now we'll talk about a multi-line doc string here. So right, so here this is a I have a class. This is a doc string within a class. This is a doc string within a class. So this is a multi-line docstring. Any docstring should start with a triple double quotes, right? I'm starting it with a triple double quotes, and the first line of a docstring should start with a capital letter, and if there is one more line to it, the second line should be left blank, and you will have to start only from your third line, right? So this class is for mathematical operation on complex numbers, and I'm describing about the attributes here, and after that is done, I'm closing your docstring here. So this is again a docstring within your function, right? And when you talk about the function, you say this is a constructor for a complex number, right? And you're talking only about your parameters, and here you have this is your function. This is used to add two complex numbers, right? This is used to add two complex numbers, right? So what do you say here? This function is used to add two complex number. What are the parameters here? The complex number to be added, a complex number which contains the sum. Does anywhere in a docstring are you mentioning how to add two complex numbers? Is that mentioned anywhere? Is anywhere in your docstring how do you do the addition process? It is mentioned. So it is not mentioned anywhere, right? It contains only information, just like what do you do, right? What are the parameters, and not how do you do, right? That information is not provided, right? This is called to be your docstring, right? We have seen what is a docstring, right? And we'll see some MCQs using your classes and objects. The first question.
Object.
Right, this is an object.
Constructor.
Constructor is used to create an object.
Class.
Class, right? Now tell me the output for this program. I have the output in your next slide. Just go through the output for, just go through the options, and then we'll go back to your program. Right, you have gone through the options. Can I go back to your program? See, it should be less than a minute, and you're taking more than that.
Option C, ma'am. Hello world.
Can I go to your options now? Right, hello world will be displayed. I can, a value can be initialized within a constructor also. A value can be initialized within a constructor also. So hello world is displayed as your output. What is the purpose of your set attribute?
Yeah.
A. To
Option
access
B,
the
ma'am.
attribute of an object.
To set an attribute.
Right, this is used to set an attribute. Set attribute is used to set an attribute, and get attribute.
To access the attribute of the object.
Get attribute is used to access the attribute of the object.
Error.
Error. Check. Check your answer. Think what is the what do you do in get attribute and what do you do in set attribute?
7, ma'am.
Right, the answer is 7. So I say self dot a is equal to x plus y plus z. So when I call change is change of 1 to 3, this will be 1 plus 2 plus 3. What is the answer? What is 1 plus 2 plus 3? This is 6. 1 plus 2 plus 3 is 6. And now when you say y is equal to get attribute of x comma a. So what do you get? You get 6. 6 is the value of a now. So I say set attribute of x comma a y plus 1. The attribute of a will be now set to y plus 1. So that is 6 plus 1. So you get the answer as 7. You understand? So that is why I get the answer as 7. So now what do you do? Change 1, 2, 3, x plus y plus z, x plus y plus z, 1 plus 2 plus 3, you get the answer as 6. So the value of a is now 6. So now when I say get attribute of x comma a, the value of a 6 will be transferred to x. So after that I say set attribute of x comma a y plus 1. So this will be a 6 plus, this will be now y plus 1, 6 plus 1, 7. So 7 will be displayed as your output now. Okay. You're clear? Right, the next one.
Error, madam.
Error.
Parameter is not given.
Right? This is error. Why it is an error? So when this is a parameterized constructor. I have one parameter. So when I create an object, you will have to give one parameter. So when you create an object, one parameter has to be passed.
True, ma'am.
This is true or false?
True, ma'am.
This code is a right. This code is a correct code. You don't find anything wrong with this code. Everything is correct. So this code is correct. And finally, I have deleted the object also.
Old is printed.
Nothing will be printed. First, try to understand what type of variable is old.
New, ma'am.
What, ma?
New spring.
D. See, Sorry, if you're telling me the answer, please be a bit louder. I'm not able to hear you properly.
B, ma'am.
B,
Old, ma'am.
right. Only old will be printed. The new variable will not be printed. It's only the old variable will be printed. Remember, strings are immutable.
Option D, ma'am.
Creating an instance.
Creating an instance of a
It's creating an instance of a class.
Thirteen.
13, madam.
13, ma'am.
Option C. Option C.
Yes, ma'am.
Right, it's option C, right? I'll tell you how it is. What is object dot quantity? 10. Object dot quantity is 10. And what is object dot leading and trailing underscore of dictionary, right? When you say object of dictionary, right? How many objects does your dictionary have, right? So here your dictionary will contain 3 keys. One is your price, quantity, and bags. So there are 3 keys: price, quantity, and bag, right? So price will be 50, quantity will be 10, and bags will be 2. What do you mean by a len of dictionary? When I say len of dictionary, how many number of key value pairs that I have in a dictionary? How many number of key and value pairs that I have in a dictionary? It is 3. So 10 plus 3 is 13. So if you have any doubts with regarding this, please let me know. Don't wait till I complete. Please let me know. Right, we'll wait for some other answers also. Demo. C or D. It's main. The answer is main. So what are you printing? It's the name. So which module it's in the main function, so that will be printed.
D, madam.
D. Is it possible to, it is not possible to create an empty class?
B, madam.
B, option B. So you will have to use a pass statement. So you'll have to use a pass statement, right?
Special methods.
Special methods.
Right, they are called as your special methods.
False.
False, ma'am.
You won't have to call it, they will be automatically called. Go through the program first, then I'll show you the options.
Options, ma'am.
I'll show you the options.
True, ma'am.
A, ma'am.
True, ma'am.
So does this has an attribute? So it will be either true or false. You'll have only two possible options, right? Yes, you have an option, right? There is an age. You can check here, student1.age. I've already given an instance here. This is possible in Python, right? We have seen some examples also. So the answer is true.
True, ma'am.
True.
Right. So remember, init is very similar to a constructor. Init is a constructor. Init is your constructor method, but we haven't seen anything called to be a destructor. So this del method is treated as a destructor. They are very similar to destructors. Del methods are very similar to destructors.
Main.
Test.
Main or test.
Main.
See, this is not main. Previously, I was printing only name. Now I say test.name. Test is your name of your class, and in your previous example it was only the name, so you said the main was printed, but now I say test.name, so the name of the class will be displayed as an output.
Hundred, ma'am.
123.
123 because you have updated, so it's 123.
D, ma'am. Welcome.
Welcome.
So this is your strip method. All your leading spaces will be removed. When I have /t, /n, they all mean your spaces, so they all will be deleted.
$51.
51, ma'am.
Right? The answer is 51. So your right, this one. I hope this is the last one.
Option C, ma'am.
Use your class name also to access the corresponding doc string, right? As you know, you can have n number of classes. So if you want to access that particular doc string, then you'll have to use your class name also, right? So you're clear with all your concepts of object-oriented programming here. Right? So you don't have doubts with any of your questions in your MCQ. So you're clear. So your next class tomorrow will be again moving with your inheritance, your abstraction and encapsulation, right? So before that, we will have a short go through of your file handling methods, right? I'll quickly tell you what are the methods that you'll have in your file handling. So before proceeding with that, why do you require a file? Your standard input and output you are receiving in your keyboard. You use your keyboard to receive an input from the user and you use your monitor to display the output to the user. But instead of that, still why do you require a file? What is the purpose of a file handling? When you need to handle large volumes of data, you go for a file handling method, right? When you access large volumes of data, you go for files. Suppose when I have to read the names and mobile number of all the students in your college, right? Name and mobile number of all the students in your college, will it be possible for a user to enter it manually in a console? Right? It becomes a very difficult task, and also that when I keep entering them manually, there are chances of having typo errors, right? You'll have chances of having typo errors, right? In order to avoid that, this is again a huge data. The name and mobile number of all the students in your college is again a huge data, right? So when I need to handle such huge volumes of data, it is better for me to go for files. And also that when I'll have to display a huge volume of data in your console, it becomes a difficult process for the user to read it. It becomes a difficult process for the user to read it, right? So in order to avoid that, in order to avoid all those things, you can go for a file. You can read a file from the user and also you can display the file to the user. So any file before you start your operation, right? Before you start your operation, you have to open a file. You will have to open a file. Before start working in a file, any operation, the file has to be open for operation. And this file open function takes us two arguments. One is the name of the file and other is the mode in which you want to open your file. So this is all very similar to your previous languages, right? I'm just giving you the syntaxes or just giving you a small recap. There are four modes of opening a file: read mode, append mode, write mode, and your create mode, right? When you say R, this is the default mode of opening a file. And when you open a file in a read mode, you can only read the contents of a file and you cannot make any changes to the contents of a file. And also when you open a file in a read mode, if the file doesn't exist, right? When the file does not exist, then this function will return you a error. And when you open a file in an append mode, right? When you open a file in an append mode, what happens here is that the newly added contents, right? Whatever contents that you add to an existing file, it will be added to the end of your file. It will be added to your end of your file. And if the file that you have requested for appending is not available, then the file will be created, right? When the file will be created, when the file is not available. So you open a write mode. This is used to write to a file, and when the file is not available, this mode will create a file for you. And next, this is your create mode. It creates a specified file, right? File will be created, and if the file already exists, then this method will return you a error, right? So this is a 4 mode. These are the 4 modes in which you can open a file. And there are 2 additional modes, like how do you handle a file. The 2 modes are text mode and a binary mode. A text mode is a default method. So when I say a file is opened in text mode, then it says that the file contains only text. The file will contain only text. But when I open the file binary mode, then this file can contain images or any multimedia pics that you want can be accessed in a file. And to open a file, I'll use a file handle, right? You call this as a file pointer, but in Python, you call it to be a handle to a file. So now when you say f is equal to open of demo file.txt, right? So now I have not mentioned in which mode the file will be open. So it will be open in my default mode, right? So this sentence is very similar to writing it as RT. R stands for your write mode, and T says that this file should be handled like a text file because both are default. So the first thing is that you need to create a file, right? So for the demo purposes, I'm creating a file with 3 lines here, right? So now when I say f.read, your contents of your file will be read into your console. Your contents of your file will be read to your output screen. And if you want to read only a part of a file, so just when you say read of file, only the first 5 characters of your file will be read. Only the first 5 characters of the file will be read to you. And if you want, you can read a single line. If you want, you can read the first line of a program, first line of a file by using read line. Just using read line, I'll be reading only 1 line of the file. And when I give read line the second time, I'll be able to read 2 lines of your program. If I give read line the third time, the third line of the program will also be read by me, right? So now I have a question. This read line says that I will be able to read only the line by line. Let's suppose if I have to read only the third line of my program, how do I do? Just keep this in mind, keep the question in mind. So as we progress, tell me if you are able to find the answer. The question is, if I want to read only the third line of my program, if I have to read only the third line of my program, how do I read it, right? So this is the question. So as we progress, we'll be seeing some functions. So let us see how you will be able to find the answer. So you can also look, instead of using a file read, you can also directly printing a file using a file read method. You can also print your file using a for loop, right? And remember, any operations that you do in a file, any operation that is done in a file, you can do any operations you want in a file, and after completing all the operations in a file, you will have to close the file. The file has to be closed manually. It will not be done. It is not done automatically. It will done manually, right? So this is all reading and writing to a file. And how do you delete a file? So you cannot directly delete a file. So you will have to import something called as the OS module, right? Import your OS module, and after importing your OS module, give os.remove and the file will be removed, right? os.remove, your file will be removed. And if you want to check if your file exists, before deleting a file, if you want to check if your file exists, you can also do that. So this is done using, again you will have to import your OS module for that. Import your OS module, and after importing your OS module, then check path.exist. os.path.exist. This will do whether your file exists in memory or not. When the file exists, you can delete the file or else display a message saying that the file does not exist, right? So to delete a folder also, you have to import your OS module, import os.rmdr and the my. And remember, only empty folders can be deleted. Only empty folders can be deleted, right? So you have two important methods called as read lines and write line. So remember, there is a difference between read line and read lines. This is read lines, and previously you will have to read only the first line of your file. You will have to read only the first line of your file. I have used read lines, read line, and now I am using read lines. So what is the difference here is that this is my input file, and if you can remember, this file has got three lines of text, right? So now when I open the file in my read mode and I say f.read lines, and if you can look at your output here, your file is converted into a list. Your file is being converted into a list here. So what does this mean here is that the first line of your file will be at index 0. Your second line of your file is at index 1. Your third line of your file is at index 2. You understand? So read lines is used to convert a given file into a list. And now tell me, I've asked you a question, right? If I'll have to read only the third line of my program, how do I do now? What is your third line of your program? It is good luck now. If I'll have to read only the third line of my program, how do I read it?
By mentioning the index.
Read line 3.
Right. Just use the index, right? Print f of 2. You can use the index. This will be f of 0, f of 1, and this is f of 2. Right? So use f of, and right lines, it does the vice versa. Right line does the vice versa. What does right lines do? It takes as input a list and it converted to a file. It takes as input a list and it is converting to a file. So we'll complete just with one program, right? So first, initially I have a program. This is the name of my file is output.txt. I open the file in a write mode, and the output here is now hi there, and I close the file. You don't require a file closure. And after that, again, I open a file in my, what mode is this? No, if no mode is mentioned, in which mode I'm opening it?
Read mode.
Right, I'm opening my file in my read mode. And after that, I read the contents of your file. And if you can execute the program, the output will be hi there. And if you want to check your contents of your output.txt, it will also be hi here. And now suppose if I have to add some more lines to your program, what do you do?
Open it in append mode.
Right, I'm opening it in my append mode. Right, so open output.txt, and this should be opened in your append mode. I'm opening it in my append mode, and after that I can write file dot write anyone. Any contents can be written, right? So I write line 2. Right, and now tell me, why do I give the slash n here? What is the purpose of your slash n here?
Next line.
New line.
I need to add a new line. So that is the reason I'm giving here. I'm adding one more line also. Right, here I don't give append, right? So now we'll check this program and open your opal.txt and check the output. Right, we'll see output.txt is also the lines are being added, right? So now if again so after the statement, and now what happens? What do you think will be the contents of your file? We'll open your output text and check the content. It's only new. All your previous content was deleted. So you understand the difference between your append mode and all your other modes, right? So with this, we have reached your end of your class.
Call on us for any support.